Hi friends, today I want to talk about a few difficult things, mostly stemming around the topic of polarization. So for those of you who are following the news, or maybe not even following the news and just know of world history, we're back in a state where two countries are not politically agreeing and innocent people are dying. And there's a polarization there, where neither side is seeing eye to eye. I was watching a very heart-wrenching live video by a young person from one of these areas. What struck me most is she was barely a few years older than my own daughter. She was talking about how she and her family had fled, and she'd watched terror in the face of her neighbors, people she grew up with. They'd walked for miles. And finally, they were in a place where they weren't entirely safe and nothing was certain, but at least they were being given some amount of refuge. To me, in today's day and age, this feels so unreal. I live a life where it's privileged. I have absolutely everything. And my own teenage daughter has everything. She goes to high school. She does not think about things like war. She does not think about terror. She does not think about the anguish she's going to see on the faces of her loved ones. She does not think about uncertainty the same way this young human being was. What became apparent in watching that video is not which side she belonged to. What became apparent was human suffering. And that's what this is about today. I'm not here to take a stand on who's right and who's wrong, or heaven forbid, the political solution is way beyond my puny brain, I would say. Mostly because I don't understand a lot of the details. What I do understand is this. Humanity in general wants to be polarized. We want to take one side or the other. We don't want to identify with one group or the other. We want to be right versus others who are wrong. And if we are right, then there's got to be others who are wrong. There can never be two rights. Never. In fact, we find many wrongs, oftentimes to justify our own right. And this is because if you think about the polarity that exists within us, if we just distill everything and think of it in two ways, there's two things always ongoing. And I bring this reference up often just to make it a bit lighter. When we were younger, we watched these cartoons where you had one person sitting in a white gown on a cartoon person's shoulder, and then another person sort of wearing a devil outfit sitting on the other side. And there were the polarizations. One person was saying this, and the other person on the other side was saying that. And this person in the middle was like, oh my God, who should I listen to? In all honesty, humans almost always, in any given instant, are operating in this way. We're polarized. We're either listening to our ego, and often our egocentricity is telling us everything we want to hear from the perspective of us being right, of serving the egocentricity's needs, of following old patterns that may no longer serve us, that don't even exist anymore, but these conditions, these patterns were made, and egocentricity had allowed us to believe that this is the only way. If we do not examine it further, then often, even though we feel conflicted, we're listening to the ego. The other side is our spirit, the side which, even when we are polarized, even when we are feeling hate or revenge, even when we're angry, there's a small part of us that still feels love, that still feels hurt, even when we're hurting someone else, that still has that feeling of perhaps this is not right. And that is our spiritual self. And if spiritual self is hard to understand or something that you have not identified with, think of the most loving part of yourself. So we're always polarized between love and fear. And fear is ego. and love is our spirit. And when this gets bigger, that's when wars erupt and countries fight with each other, because groups of people have now become polarized to one or the other. So what I urge you today, I urge you this, as I've been thinking about it myself, of what can I do sitting here in my privileged, comfortable home with hot water and clean air and peace of mind and lots of spaciousness to meditate and do things like that. What can I do other than just send money to someone like that young human being who was so anguished and who is suffering with her family? What can I do for her? And I think while there are many things, there's many opportunities to provide aid, what I can do immediately is be very mindful of how I am polarized. Which part of my egocentricity am I subscribing to in this moment as I make small, tiny decisions, as I gauge the world, as I perceive everything that is going on? What is that egocentricity pushing me toward? Is it asking me to take the side of one versus the other? Is it asking me to turn my television off and not even care about what's going on? What is my spirit saying? Is she just wanting to love, send love, and hold everyone who is in that conflicted area, right or wrong, politically correct or incorrect, anyone who's suffering, either side, to just hold them in love, to hold them in kindness, and hold them in peace, and really even send that out so far and wide that perhaps the people who are in a position to bring about a peaceful political solution can do so, can find the love for those who are suffering as if they would for their own family members. And they would choose the peaceful option. They would choose love. So I'll end here and really urge every single person who watches this today, ask yourself how you're polarized. Ask yourself which part do you subscribe to most, especially when you're triggered. Which part of you, spirit, ego, or love, or fear, becomes apparent when things are perceived to be difficult or uncertain? Thank you for listening.